Hello everyone, my name is Komasinyolo. Welcome to another video by Attention Matrix, where we try to make learning fun and easy. Please comment, like, and subscribe if you would like us to continue making this content and you enjoy it or find it helpful. Now on to the next video. Let's get right into it. Hello, welcome to our first video on financial mathematics. In this video, we will be looking at the future value annuity. Okay, there are two types of annuities that we will be looking at throughout the course of our videos. It's the future value annuity and the present value annuity. Now, before I actually delve into the workings of the future value annuity, I just want to focus on what an annuity is. Okay, what is an annuity? Well, an annuity is a series of periodic payments. Okay, so an annuity is a series. Okay, it's a series of periodic payments. Periodic payments. That is what an annuity is. What does this mean? Well, it means that if you have an investment account or some sort of account, right, and you pay money into this investment account and you pay this money periodically and it's a constant amount, then you have what you call an annuity. That money will accumulate interest and it will become a certain value in the future. And that is what you call an annuity. In this case, this is a future value annuity. Okay, you are putting in a series of payments into an account with the aim of accumulating a certain amount in future, including interest. Okay, including interest on those amounts that you are accumulating. So now let's have a closer look. Let's take a closer look at the future value annuity. Okay, so the future value annuity is as follows. It works as follows, right? Say you've got 1,000 rands that you want to put into an investment account starting at the end of this year. Okay, so let's say you've got 1,000 rands, right? You've got 1,000 rands and you want to put this 1,000 rands into an investment account starting at the end of the year. Okay, starting at the end of this year. Starting at the end of this year. I don't have to write all of this stuff down. Starting at the end of this year, you want to put in this 1,000 rands into an investment account. And in the following years, you want to keep putting in this 1,000 rands, say for the next 5 years. Okay, for the next 5 years. So starting at the end of this year, for the next 5 years, including the final year, you want to put in 1,000 rands into this account. Now, say that this investment account offers you an interest rate of 10%. Say it offers you an interest rate of 10%. Okay, now how would you calculate the value that you will have at the end of 5 years? Well, to calculate the value that you would have at the end of 5 years, you know that using the compound, okay, so compounded annually. By the way, the interest is 10% compounded annually, right? So how much money would you have at the end of 5 years? How would you calculate that? Well, we haven't gotten to the future value formula yet, but we will get to it. We'll work our way towards it. So now all we have at our disposal is the compound formula, right? The compound interest formula. So let's use that formula and see if we can work our way towards the final value that we're going to have. So let's say, okay, so I've got year number 1, right? Year number 1, I have 1,000 rands. So this is my P. I put in 1,000 rands. Okay, just before I list the things that I have, let's just, you know that the compound value formula is equal to A plus, so A is equal to P, open bracket, 1 plus I, which is your interest rate, all to the power of N, right? You should know this from your earlier grades. Okay, so this is your compound interest formula. Now, we will use this formula to calculate how much we'll have at the end of 5 years. But remember that this formula works for an amount that you put in once. So you put in an amount once and then you let that amount accumulate interest, and at the end of a certain amount of time, which is n, you will get a value of A, which is the final value with the accumulated interest. Okay, now in this case that we're dealing with here right now, let me just go back up on top, up there. In this case, what we're doing is we are making a series of periodic payments into an investment account. That payment, those series of payments are 1,000 rands every year, starting at the end of this year. Okay, those are the periodic payments that you're going to be making. So you will notice the difference already that, okay, so far we must figure out a way to use this formula to take into account the fact that we are putting in 1,000 rands every year. Okay, it's not just one amount that grows and accumulates interest and then gets to a final value. It's every year we put in an amount. Okay, so let's start off with the first amount that we put in, year number one. At the end of year number one, okay, so we've got year number one, we've got 1,000 rands. We've got 1,000 rands that we want to put into an investment account. This 1,000 rands will accumulate interest for the remaining amount of time. For the remaining number of years, it will be accumulating interest. Okay, so if I have 5 years, right? If I have 5 years, and I accumulate interest over a period of a number of years, starting at the end of the first year, you will agree with me that, let me do it this way. If I've got year number one, year number two, year number three, year number four, and year number five, you will agree with me that the money that I have, I'm at time zero. Okay, I'm at time zero. This is the present time, right? I start investing at that time there. I put in 1,000 rands. That 1,000 rands that I put in at the end of the first year, will accumulate interest for this amount of time. So it will accumulate interest for 4 years. Okay, for 4 years, it will accumulate interest. Why 4 years and why not 5 years? Because I only put it in at the end of the first year, and it's accumulating interest in year number 2, year number 3, year number 4, and year number 5. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So it takes 4 years to accumulate interest. Okay, it's very important that you understand that. Okay, so this accumulates interest at the end of this accumulates interest for 4 years. So what I have here, the amount that I will have from that is A is equal to the 1,000 rands, which is my P, right? The 1,000 rands, which is my P, then 1 plus my interest, which is 10% compounded annually. That's my 10% compounded annually to the power of 4. Okay, that is just my first 1,000 rands that I put in. But remember that I'm not just putting in 1,000 rands. Let me just write down my percentage nicely. That looks bad. 10%. Okay, so that's 10%. 10%. Remember, we are working our way towards the future value formula so that it makes sense, why we use it. Okay, so I'm giving you a bit of context, a lot of context, so that you understand why we use the future value formula, why we use it, how we use it, and when, more importantly, when we should use it. Okay, so far, remember our situation. Our situation is that I have a savings account. I want to put in 1,000 rands into the savings account every year, starting at the end of this year, with an interest rate of 10% compounded annually, compounded every year. And what I do, first thing that I do is I put in the money at the end of the first year. I am currently at time 0. At the end of the first year, which is there at 1 there, then I will put in 1,000, but by the time I put in the 1,000, I will be left with 4 years, and therefore I used this formula to calculate how much interest that 1,000 will have accumulated over that period of 4 years. Okay, so now let's move on to the next 1,000 that I put in. Remember, I'm at time 0. There's year 1, there's year 2, year 3, year 4, and year 5. Right. Now let's look at the second 1,000 that I put in. So this is done. Okay, now I've got a second 1,000 rands that I put in at the end of the second year, okay, at time 2. Now, when I put this into the savings account, it has how many years to accumulate interest? Well, it has 1, 2, 3 years to accumulate interest. It has 3 years to accumulate interest. So I will say the interest that this one accumulates is A is equal to 1,000, because that's the money that I put in, then plus 1 plus 10% compounded annually, then close bracket, all to the power of 3. Okay, so this is for the second amount of 1,000 that I put into my investment account. So far I've got two values. I'm going to call this A2, and then the first one I'm going to call A1. Okay, so A1 has a certain value and A2 has a certain value as well. So these are different 1,000 Rand amounts that I paid into my investment accounts, and both of these 1,000 Rands are accumulating interest. Both of them are accumulating interest, so we will have to add them together at the end of the term. Okay, and then we do the same thing for the next amount that I'm going to put in, the next amount. So we have the current time, we have year 1, we have year 2, we have year 3, we have year 4, and we have year 5. Okay, so this is the current time, time 0. This I put in my 1,000. This I put in my 1,000 already. Now I'm going to put in my 1,000 for year number 3. By the time I put in my 1,000 into the investment account at the end of the third year, how many years am I left with? I'm left with 1, 2. I'm left with 2 years, right? So since I'm left with 2 years, then I use the compound interest formula. Then I will take that 1,000 and substitute it into that formula. Then I get 10% compounded annually to the power of 2, right? Because I put it in here, then that's 1, 2. That's 1, 2. So that's going to be to the power of 2. Then I'm going to call this A3. So A3 will have a particular value. Okay, same thing with year number 4, right? I've got time 0. I've got year number 1, year number 2, year number 3, year number 4, and year number 5. This is time 0. This is the present. This is, I took this into account already. I took this into account already. I put in my 1,000 at that time there. And when I put it in, I have 1 year left before the term ends, or before the period ends, before I can collect my money, right? So then what happens? What happens is that I've got 1 year left. So I use this. I'm going to call it A4. What was the previous one? Previous one was A3. So this is A4. I'm going to call this 1,000 because that's the 1,000 that I'm putting in. And I have 1 plus 10% compounded annually to the power of 1. Okay, to the power of 1. Then what I have is A4. If you punch this in your calculator, you're going to have an answer of A4. Okay, and then I have the last one. Then I have the final one. So I've got time 0, I've got year 1, I've got year 2, I've got year 3, I've got year 4, and I've got year 5. Okay, so at time 0, I don't put anything in. This I catered for it already, I catered for that already, catered for that already, catered for that already. And at the end of the 5th year, I put in 1,000. But this 1,000 that I put in at the end of the 5th year does not accumulate any interest. It accumulates no interest whatsoever at all because I put it in at the end of the 5th year. Okay, so it doesn't accumulate interest. So then that A5 is just going to be 1,000 because it doesn't accumulate interest. It doesn't change. Okay, now how much have I accumulated at the end of 5 years? Well, the total, I'm going to call it A total, right? I'm going to call it A total. How much will I have at the end of 5 years? You will agree with me that I just add all the different amounts with all the accumulated interests on the 1,000, right? So I've got A1, I've got A2, I've got A3, I've got A4, and I've got A5. And this amount is what I call my future value. Okay, this amount is what I call my future value. This is the value that I will have in the future from the series of payments that I've been making into my account as they were accumulating interest over time. Okay, this is the amount that I will have, and that amount is based on all those series of payments, and this is my future value. Okay, now what if I tell you that now I want I want to keep doing the same thing, but I want to keep doing it for the next 10 years, or I want to keep doing it for the next 20 years, or I want to keep doing it for the next 100 years. Now, I'm not going to do all of these calculations one by one and add them all together. I'm going to need a lot of time to do these calculations, and it's just inefficient. Okay, so this is where the future value formula comes in. This is where this future value formula comes in. So the future value formula is given by that, and then you've got 1 plus I to the power of, let me see, I'm just copying it somewhere, I have it here by my side. Don't try to memorize these formulae. I used to try to do that a lot, but don't. It's not necessary. Okay, you've got n that, and then all over I. Okay, so this is your future value formula. Okay, this is your future value formula. You should have it on your formula sheet. Understand when to use this formula. Okay, so this is your future value formula. Now, what are the parameters that are involved in this formula? You've got your x. X is the amount that you put in. Okay, the x in our case was 1,000. That's the constant amount that you put into your account. Okay, that's the amount that you put in on a certain set interval. That's the amount that accumulates interest. Okay, and I is obviously your interest rate. That's your interest rate, how much interest your money is growing by, and F is the actual future value that you get in at the end of your term. Okay, and N is the period. It's the time that you want to invest your money for. Okay, so this formula does exactly this formula does exactly what we did with all those steps that I mentioned before. This formula takes all of these steps into account. You see, all of these steps are taken into account when we use the future value formula. Now, when do you use this future value formula? You use this future value formula when you want to get to a certain amount of money in the future. You don't have the money currently, you want to have that money in the future, so you use the future value formula. So for instance, let's try to think of an example. Let's say I say, look, in future I want to have 50,000 rands. I want to have 50,000 rands in future. I don't have it currently, but I want to have it in the future. How much money will I need to put into a savings account on a consistent, continual basis for me to get to 50,000 rands after 4 years? Okay, say I want to get to 50,000 rands after 4 years, and I want to put money into an investment account, and I want that money to grow with a certain interest rate. How long do I have? How much do I have to put in the money? I mean, how much is the money that I would have to put into the savings account in order for me to get to 50,000 after 4 years at a certain interest rate? Let's say the interest rate that I'm given is still 10%. Okay, how much money would I have to put in? Well, that's where you use the formula. You use the formula if you want to work towards a certain amount of money in the future. Okay, you want to get to a certain amount of money in the future. You don't have it currently. You don't have it. You are planning to get to that amount in the future. Okay, so you would simply use the future value formula. You would use the future value formula. Okay, I'm not going to write it out again, but it's up here. You use this future value formula. You want to get to 50,000 rands. That's your future value, right? So you can solve. So you're basically looking for X. How much do you have to put into a savings account to get to 50,000 rands after 4 years? So all you do is substitute 50,000 rands. That's the amount that you would like to get to in the future. And then X is what you're looking for. That is the amount of money that you have to put in on a continual basis for you to get to the 50,000 rands while it is accumulating interest in the account. Okay, and then you say 1 plus 10%, 1 plus 10%, and then we said 4 years, then minus 1, close brackets, then over 10%. Okay, then you solve. Okay, you solve. we will do examples on a separate video, but here I'm just explaining the concept. Okay, what's important for me in this video is that you understand the concept, and then we'll do more detailed examples on a separate video. So you just take this entire thing here, you take that 50,000 and then you divide it by that entire thing there, then you'll get your value of X. Okay, so this is when you would use your future value formula. So the future value formula, just to recap, takes all of these steps into account. All of these steps into account. Firstly, why can't you use the compound interest formula? Remember, I said earlier on in this video, you cannot use just the compound interest formula. You can't use just this formula. You can't use just this formula to solve such problems, because this formula is based on just one investment. You only put in your money into an account once, and then you sit back and you forget about it, right? You put it once, you put it into the account once, and then you sit back and you forget about it, and you let it grow over a certain amount of time, right? But for the future value, for an annuity, you keep putting in money into the investment account and it keeps growing. So you have to use this over and over again for different time periods. Okay, and then add all those different time periods together to get your final future value. And this is what this formula does. Okay, now I'm not going to go into the derivation of this formula. You can look it up somewhere if you're interested. It's a simple derivation based on the geometric summation, geometric series, and it's very simple. You can look it up. Maybe I will cover it on a separate video, but this is what this formula covers. Okay, this is when you would use this formula. Remember, only use this formula if you are working towards an amount of money. You don't have that money with you today. You're working towards a future value, and for you to get to that future value, you have to put in money consistently into an account and let that money accumulate interest over a period of time so that you get to your final answer, to your final future value. Okay, so that is the future value. This is, remember, it's a concept. I just want you to understand the principle. We will cover we will cover the examples on a separate video. Okay, till next time. Lesson number one, lesson number one. Lesson number one, lesson number one.